I got asked a question. I'm going to give you the answer, but I also want to hear your opinion. Please go to the comment section. Try to make it brief, all right? But I do really want to hear from this. Here's what I was asked. What would Kamaru Usman have to do to surpass Georges St-Pierre as the greatest of all time in MMA? All right. First off, Usman's already doing it. I admit for you it is not done. He has not passed St-Pierre, but he is already doing it, which is to go out there and win your fights. St-Pierre had a laser focus on his division of 170 pounds. And even if he went and did the champ thing, he was laser focused on 170 for 16 years. It's the same thing that Usman is doing. Usman is now also winning in very dominant fashion. Not only is Usman not losing fights, hardly ever is he even losing rounds, and he's showing an ability to win the fight in multiple frames. If it comes down to a decision, which is largely a representative of positional control, Usman's winning. If it's coming down to on your feet, can you put the other guy down? Do you have the power to stop the fight? Yes, is the answer for Usman. Here's what Usman is up against, right? Before we can solve how does he surpass Georges St-Pierre in the minds of the viewer as the greatest to have ever done it, you have to understand what it is that George did. And George put himself in a very unique spot because George beat all the guys of yesteryear. Now, just to be able to get on the docket with those guys is not easy to do. Some of it is luck. Some of it is happenstance. Some of it is circumstance. But George did end up with the guys of yesteryear, the Matt Hugheses and the BJ Penns of the world. George then was able to beat everybody of his time. That's where the Josh Koscheck's, by example, and the Nick Diaz's would come in. But, and again, some of it was luck that can't be controlled, but George was able to beat the future. And that's what happened the night that George beat Johnny Hendricks. George leaves. He leaves the sport. He leaves the belt behind. Johnny Hendricks, who had lost to George, goes and picks it up and runs with it. So all of those things credited George, but it's going to be very hard for anybody to beat the guys of yesterday. Usman might be so damn good, he can't even get a fight with one of those guys. He's too good, and they're not ranked high enough. How do we hold that against Usman? Well, we might. All of the guys of today, Usman's already beat them. That's what being the champion of the world reigning means. To beat the next generation is something that once Usman hangs it up and walks away, somebody else that he beat has to get that opportunity and run with it, right? I mean, do you see where it's almost impossible to do it strategically? To beat yesterday, today, and tomorrow, to do that strategically would be impossible. It would just be happenstance that you would look back on in hindsight and go, look, he did it, and you point to Georges St-Pierre. But I do want to stay on Usman because George did something, which is he went through everybody, but then he went through them twice. That's largely what we saw when he got in there with Josh Koscheck. George beat Josh. Josh runs through the field, runs through him, makes it as clear as night follows day that he is the next best thing. They do the rematch. So when George was able to get the jump on Josh that time, he also showed who is the king for right now, and he showed it very clearly. But we're seeing Usman do that. That's what Masvidal Part 2 was. We're seeing Usman doing that. That's what's agreed to fight Chaos Covington is all about. And now you have the new guard. And many of us thought Masvidal was just going to follow on this path, eventually run into Leon, right? We even had Wonderboy Thompson come out and make an argument that was as good as any argument I've heard, where Wonderboy said, I guess I get Usman next because I'm the only guy in the top 5 that hasn't had him once yet. Okay. Wonderboy's not without an argument to that. There's something on that. I think most of us thought he was just going to go right into Leon and just start fighting these same guys, show that he's the best, show it a second time over, which is something St-Pierre did, check that box off, and look to comes what's next. But then all of a sudden you have the emergence of guys like Vince Luque. And Luque, I believe, has something unique to offer Masvidal. I don't know how much I believe. I know Masvidal is willing to go through the roster a second time, but I don't know how much he wants to. I mean, I think that Masvidal would like something fresh. He would like something new. Now, I'm projecting here. It's all I can do. Put myself in his shoes, think of how I'd want to do, and then guess that he would want the same. But I would want some new blood. I would want a new challenge. I would want something that's not redundant. I mean, I think about what Volkanovski's already been through with Max Holloway, And then I look at the fact that Volkanovski might have to go through it again with 5 more rounds of Max Holloway. I could see where Holloway's motivation comes from, but you're going to have to really use some mental toughness to find that motivation if you're in Volkanovski's shoes. Luque has a way to go here. Luque got a reaction from the champion of the world. Now, Luque could not get the blessing because the champion of the world, Kamaru Usman, already has a date. It's coming up with Colby. But Joe, remember the time when he did not, and I'm talking about Usman, when he had an open dance card and he straight up called out George Masvidal. Boom, Masvidal got the opportunity. So in many ways, I think Luque got everything that you could hope for. He called for the fight with the champ. The champ responded. And though the champ may not have said yes, the champ can't. He's got Covington coming up. Luque's in a very interesting spot. He's probably going to have to find something to do in the interim. I think Leon Edwards versus Luque is more likely than Luque versus Usman or Leon versus Usman. I think. But there's something going on with Edwards. It would seem as though Edwards been given word from somebody, or he had a backroom deal somewhere. But he's been noticeably quiet as of late, particularly for the huge bounce that he got after fighting Nate Diaz. He's been oddly quiet, as though he perhaps is the backup fighter, and that's what he's focused on between Colby and Usman. I suspect that somebody is. Perhaps that's already agreed to be Leon, and everybody agreed to keep their mouth shut. If he did agree to that, then it was perhaps told, if you don't get filled in as the backup, you will be next. Because Edwards has been suspiciously absent. So where does that go? Who come out on top? I think if you look at Luque and everything that he did, if you think the fact that he called for Usman, he wasn't given that shot, I think he got as close as you can get. He knew that Usman was busy, but he got his attention. He got a reaction. Step in the right direction. Story complete? No. But it's a step in that direction.